Today is the Day of Reconciliation. It's a public holiday that's aimed at fostering reconciliation and national unity in the country. It was previously known as the Day of the Vow, or Dingaan's Day, and marked a victory by the voortrekkers over the Zulus in the Battle of Blood River. Now, after the end of apartheid, December 16th became a celebration for the end of apartheid and promoting unity between the country's diverse racial groups. But the 2021 Reconciliation Barometer that was released yesterday found that 72% of around 2,400 respondents that are surveyed there felt that some of the divisions of the past still persist. Let's try and unpack all of this for you now. Reimagine SA's co-founder, Dr Mamphela Ramphele, joins us now via our video link for more thoughts on what we should be making of this day. We're also hoping to speak to Father Smangaliso, who's a Catholic priest, of Smangaliso Mkhatshwa. And as soon as he joins us, we'll have that conversation with him as well. But for now, Dr Ramphele, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much, as always, for making time. Interesting findings from that survey, which I've referenced a short while ago. 72% of the respondents who are involved there saying that South Africa is still dealing with its divisive past. Should we be surprised by that, given how entrenched apartheid was and how long-standing the stench of its legacy still is?
No, we shouldn't be surprised for all of those reasons, but there is a more important reason for why we continue to be a divided nation, which is that our government chose the divisions that were created by a racist system to categorize South Africans. So when you categorize people, you are promoting and perpetuating division. The second reason is we are looking for reconciliation and unity using other people's conceptual frameworks. Social cohesion has no resonance in Limpopo, where I come from. It has no resonance in the Eastern Cape, where the majority of people are, and in KZN. Why are we not using Ubuntu as the philosophical orientation that comes from our ancestors, who were the first human civilization? The whole world is turning back to learning from ancient wisdom, combining that with modern science to understand who we are as people. So South Africans, given the history and given the perpetuation of these divisions, have not yet come to understand what it means to be human. Ubuntu, what is that? Because if we were to follow that ancient wisdom, we would know that reconciliation means we must reconcile with who we are inside.
Right.
And we are sacred people. And then we can see ourselves in other people. So the divisions become nonsensical because human beings are meant to be interconnected and interdependent. That's what Ubuntu is about. Right.
I find the distinction that you're making to be quite fascinating, actually. So you speak about social cohesion having no resonance in places like where you're from, in Limpopo, and perhaps other areas across the country, and you're appealing for Ubuntu rather to be used as, I guess, the philosophy that drives us forward. Is this a matter of language being the issue, or, again, what underpins those words, the tenets, the value system, the philosophy that underpins those words? Help us distill a bit more the critique that you're making.
Colonial conquest was not just about taking away our land and our material possessions. The most important weapon of colonial conquest was the mind of the conquered. When people come and tell you that your language doesn't matter, you look ugly, you are none-them, and that you don't have a God, that you are nothing, then it's very difficult, even when they have left, as we have seen with post-colonial Africa, across the continent. We are fighting against ourselves. We are undermining the well-being of the most vulnerable amongst us because we don't see ourselves in other people. We have lost that interconnectedness and interdependence. And if we talk reconciliation, that's what we need to be doing. We need to go back to the wisdom of our ancients. It's not a matter of language. It's literally a matter of belief. It's a matter of it's an existential issue. Without reconciling with who we are as human beings, we will not ever have the so-called social cohesion, which I really do not like as a concept, but we will not be able to live in peace with ourselves, in peace with our families and our neighbors. Why do you think there's so much gender-based violence? It wasn't there during apartheid of this extent. So the deep-seated self-hatred, which was instilled by colonial conquest that told us that we are nothings, we are non-Europeans and non-whites, we still have that in our minds. And part of the beauty of black consciousness that we as young, great unwashed students in the 70s adopted was that it liberated us from that self-hatred. And we're able as students to understand that your values as an individual in this Ubuntu framework must be the same values that govern your professional life and your political choices that you make. So when you do that, when you go and work as a nurse, as a doctor, as a politician, you are a servant of your people because your people are you.
Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa is a Catholic priest, also the chairperson of the Regeneration movement. He joins us now via our telephone line. And Father Mkhatshwa, it's great to have you on the program on this issue. Thanks very much indeed for making time. It was Dr. Ramphele just a short moment ago who spoke about being a servant of the people and how in some respects that hopefully will lead us to where we're hoping to go. You as a Catholic priest understand that concept, I imagine, quite well. However, I also wonder whether you think that's where the issues are versus bread and butter matters of people being able to have food on the table, electricity in their homes, safety and security, for instance. Are those not the issues, perhaps, that are preventing us from getting to that level of cohesiveness that we're hoping for?
Yes. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I would like to greet all those who are sitting on this panel on this very important day. Now, I just want to make a few remarks about my understanding of reconciliation. We should make a distinction between reconciliation between individual persons, one-on-one, as opposed to a reconciliation that involves perhaps an individual or involves one structure towards another structure. In this particular instance, to make it very, very practical, we have a situation where we had a system of apartheid with all what that entailed. And we're now saying the time is long overdue for us as South Africans to have reconciled with one another. Now, what are the implications of that? I think the exercise goes beyond just hugging, kissing, and shaking hands, and so on and so on. It should go to a level where we try to see to what extent we can actually reconstruct or even build a society that is diametrically opposed to what apartheid stood for. The other day I was talking to someone, and I was, he was asking about de Klerk's role, and I said, for me, if at all de Klerk would have been advised by me, I would have said, over and above just the verbal expression of regret and so on, about the past, we should find a way of reconstructing the relationships, and we can do so by addressing some of the social ills that are facing us now, especially those of a structural nature. Mm-hmm. We can, for example, try to see to what extent the system of education can empower particularly the most disadvantaged people who for a long time, I think, have been, in a way, victims to a system of education that produces many certificates, but does not really fully empower people to be themselves, to see themselves as new human beings, free and ready to build a new country together to ensure that there is social cohesion and so on. That's what, for me, reconciliation should really be about, because the past is the past. You cannot change that, but you can change the present and the future.
Absolutely.
So that's what reconciliation for me should be. That should be our agenda.
Essentially, if I can come in there, the question becomes, can we really meaningfully speak about reconciliation without addressing what many people still accept as Maslow's pyramid of needs, right? If people fundamentally don't feel seen, don't feel that their dignity is protected in a country like ours because of the many socio-economic issues we're still facing, do we even stand a chance at reconciliation, Dr. Ramphele?
No. But the reason why people don't have bread on the table is because our successive governments have had people who have taken the money that was supposed to create the socioeconomic equality and equity for every citizen. Think about how many budget allocations were given for making sure that children don't go to school under trees. Think about children who still fall into pit latrines. Think about Gogo, whose pension gets stolen. All of those things are manifestations of a people who have lost their sense of Ubuntu. If you are a servant of the people and you are in government, you will not take money for PPE. You will not take money which is intended to help those who are really at the bottom. The 350 rand, what are you going to do with that when you are earning already close to 1 million rand? That's what we need to be looking at. Let's not look at the symptoms. Let's look at the root cause. The root cause of inequality in South Africa. Yes, it's got historical roots, but the reason we have not been able to overcome our history is because those in positions of power do not understand that their service, their responsibility is to make sure that the least amongst us gets their basics so that they can live with dignity, and we in turn can look at them as we look at our own selves and our own grandmothers and grandfathers.
Father Mkhatshwa, how do we shift the dial and appeal to those in power without relying on their moral compass to do better for those who rely on them? I mean, you know, in an ideal world, I'm sure you're hoping that people will just come to the confessional and be able to have a change of heart. But we know that's not how things work, despite us hoping that it was perhaps that easy. With that in mind, with that complexity in mind, where do we go from here?
Yes, I think to build on what Dr. Mamphela has just said, with which I agree. I think what we probably ought to be talking about now is to critically and fundamentally address the challenge of deeply entrenched social inequalities, economic disparities, to talk about the manner in which even the provision of basic municipal services and so on, that's all part of the reconstruction, because we are now talking about building a new people, giving hope for particularly the historically disadvantaged people, that they become agents of change themselves. So then when you're talking about reconciliation, it's all about reconstruction, building a new society, building new relationships, and building a better future for all.
Father Smangaliso Mkhatshwa, thanks very much indeed for weighing in on this important discussion. Father Mkhatshwa is the chair of the Regeneration movement. Also unpacking those issues for us was the co-founder of Reimagine SA, Dr Mamphela Ramphele. It was a conversation that was never going to be ventilated in the mere time we have on a morning program, but hopefully a springboard for a whole lot more discourse in the day to come.